Hello everyone. In this session, I am going to discuss a very important part for your examination, and that is how to make notes. Now, how to make notes becomes a very essential part for anyone's preparation. But before you know how to make notes, you should understand the rationale behind why we should make notes. Because if you are convinced that yes, making notes is very important for your examination, this is when you will pay more attention to making notes. So let me first explain to you why making notes is important. Starting with the very first point, the vastness of syllabus. Now, we have already had a discussion on the syllabus. We have seen the vastness of the syllabus, we have seen how many subjects have to be learnt and what are the areas to be learnt in each and every subject. Why they are important, whether they are important in prelims or mains, all these kind of things we had discussed. Now, after discussing all those things, you have already seen that there are more than 10 subjects that you have to read. If I just count it out, you have history, geography, polity, economy, science and technology, environment, international relations, social issues, disaster management, internal security, governance, social justice, ethics. So if I'm just counting on my fingers, I can see that you have 13 subjects that you have to complete. Now, completing one subject at a time is very easy. You would be able to start a subject, understand them very well, and complete that subject probably in a month or 1 month and a half. But after that, you'll see that then you'll move on to the next subject and so on. So what happens at the end of 6th month is that you have completed maybe 4 or 5 subjects. And once you've completed 4 or 5 subjects, it's not easy for you to just remember everything that you had done 6 months back. And you all have been through your classes, class 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, after that 11, 12, your graduation. And you know that every time you have an examination, you do go back to all the studies that you had done, the books that you had read, the notes that you had made, the highlighting in the books that you had done, you go back to each and everything. Just for a moment, just think that if you did not do anything, go back to class 8th. Let's say there is a history lecture that is going on. You understood everything that the teacher was saying, but you did not write anything. Do you think that when you go to your annual examination, you would remember each and everything that was taught on day 1? Let's say your session starts in April and it ends next March. So when you are writing the annual examination in March, do you think that you would remember everything that you did in April or May unless you have a reference source? And this is where you know that making notes became so much crucial at that juncture. And the same rationale applies here. Because there is a vast syllabus that is given in front of you, understanding is very good, but still you need to make notes out of it so that that becomes a reference point for you. You will remember each and everything for the next 1.5 months for everything that you learned. But after that, bit by bit, you start to forget everything. And this is where note making becomes very crucial. So that's why the very first thing is making notes is important because of the vastness of the syllabus, because you would have a good reference source for revision. Now, second point why it is important is that it helps you in answer writing. How does making notes help you in answer writing? So the very first thing is, when you go to the mains examination, you have to write answers. You have to summarize each and everything that you have been asked in maybe 250 words, sometimes 150 words. And if it is an essay, maybe more than 1000 words. So for each and everything like this, you have to use a good language also. While you write answers, it's not only the content that you present, but it's also your presentation that you present. So how you write, how have you presented your answer, what's there in your first paragraph, how are you continuing with the second and the third paragraphs, all this matters a lot. And that's where note making again becomes very crucial. How? When you are making notes, let's say you are listening to a lecture and you are making notes out of it. So what happens subconsciously is that when you make notes out of all these lectures, you'll be using the language that you see on the screen. And because you are doing all that, you are making a habit of using the language that is an academic language. That is a language which is required for your examination. And once you start doing this, this is where you get into the habit of writing a good answer and present a good answer. So from the point of view of answer writing, it becomes very important that you start following the language that is being used by all the faculty in every subject that we are giving you. In some of the areas, I can say yes, they are very much factual, and even if you just take the notes from the faculty, that's also fine. But try to make notes for each and everything. Try to make notes for every subject that you're learning, because that will enable you to be self-sufficient. Another very important point is about time management. Now, many of you might think that why am I mentioning time management here? Are we not wasting time by making notes out of lectures? The answer is no. Let me explain why. Let's say you have a 30-hour lecture. And in completing these 30-hour lectures, if you have not made notes, perhaps you'll complete it in 35 hours. So a 30-hour lecture has taken 35 hours to complete. But if you are making notes, perhaps this becomes 60 hours instead of being 30 hours, because you would be pausing the lecture, you will be making notes out of it, and doing all that perhaps will double the amount of time. Now, these 60 hours are not wasted. Rather, they have been invested. Now just go back to the scenario of you being in a classroom, in your school, in your college, whatever you want. And just imagine that there is a history lecture going on, which you completed, and as I gave another example, you did not make notes. So what happens is, you have to attend those lectures again and again. You have to come back to that lecture again and again so that you recall each and everything. But if you have made notes, you just go through your notes and see what all you compiled out of it. Once you know what all you compiled out of it, everything is now afresh again. Now, if you did not do that, you have to go back to that particular class again and again and again. And the same thing has to be done with the tablet as well. That once you've completed a lecture, if you want to revise and you have not made any kind of notes, anything like that, then in that case, you have to come back to the lecture, watch it again the entire length, and then come back. Now you have almost 400 to 500 hours of lectures to be done. Doing it 3 times means 1500 hours of time. Just calculate 1500 hours of time. How much time does it take? If you divide it by the number of days that you have in hand, probably let's say 300 days, it means that 5 hours a day just watching lectures have to be done again and again and again, without any revision, without any practice, without current affairs, without anything else. So that means that you are actually wasting time by not making notes. So that's why for time management, better time management, and not only time management, I would also add a better revision. For a better revision, it's very important for you that you are making notes out of everything that you are doing. Next, a very important point, self-reliance. Why self-reliance? There is a difference between reading your own notes in your own handwriting, in your own thinking, rather than using notes which have been made by others. And many of the students have this practice, that they'll get the photocopies of the notes which have been made by others and they'll read that. Now, what's the harm in doing that? What always happens is, when you are making your own notes, you know, what you understand and what you don't. So for one student, geography would be a subject which they know very well and they understand very well. So their note making for geography will be different. And the same student might not be good in polity. The same student might not be good in economy. So the way they'll make notes in polity and economy will be very different from the way they make notes in geography. So suppose there are 2 students, student A and student B. Student A is the one who has made all the notes, let's say for economy, for geography, for polity, etc. And student B is the one who has just taken the photocopies of these notes. Now, what can happen is that student A is good in economy, student B is good in geography and polity. And when student B is taking the notes from student A, there would be a difference in the way student A would have made notes for economy and the way the same student would have made notes for geography and polity. So this is where the student who is taking the photocopied notes will suffer, because the economy notes for student A might not be as detailed as the geography notes or the polity notes. But those details were not required by student B, because that student is already good in these 2 subjects. This is one fault that you might commit if you are just taking the notes which have been made by others. Because when you make your own notes, you know your comfort areas, you know your areas where you are weak, and accordingly you make notes. This happens all the time, right? You'll put more effort on the subjects which you feel you are not good in. And that's why it helps you a lot while you come back to this revision part, when you come back to the same notes and do everything again just before the examination. So because of all these factors, I would say that this is why making notes is important. Now I'll come to the second part, that how should you make notes. Now the very first thing is, when you make notes, first of all, you know that there are two major aspects to it. One being the general studies part, and second being the current affairs. So these are the two important parts of your preparation. So every time you make notes, you have to ensure that you have made way for both of these. How will you do that? The very first step I'll say is that when you make notes, instead of using notebooks, switch to files. And these files should have individual sheets inside. Now, what is the importance of doing something like this? What is the benefit of doing something like this? What happens is, let's say when you are making notes out of the lectures, you might use, let's say for one chapter, probably 3 to 4 pages to complete note making for that particular subject or that particular topic. Now, after a while, you come across current affairs of that topic. So the current affairs should not be treated separate from the static areas of the particular subject. It should be seen as a part of the same. For example, let's say you made notes of fundamental rights. Now, fundamental rights is something based on which you'll see a lot of things coming in the newspapers every now and then. So everything that you came across should be a part of the notes. So what should ideally happen is that while you were making notes at the very first instance from the lectures, at this very instance, you made notes. Let's say it took you 4 or 5 pages to complete, and then since you are making the notes in a sheet, you always have an option to insert extra sheets whenever you want. So for example, let's say 1.5 months from now, you came across a news article which was related to fundamental rights, or let's say related to Article 15 of fundamental rights. So since it was related to Article 15 of fundamental rights, this is where it becomes important for you to, whatever you see related to that, at least jot down the points. Even if you are not making a note out of that entire current affairs topic, one thing that you should have done, that this is the topic, this is the date, and this is the source where you read it. So for example, let's say the topic was Article 15. Let's say you read it on 1st of January and the source was the Hindu. So even if you did not make an entire note out of it, you should have done at least this. And maybe insert it in a page where fundamental rights notes are there. So what happens there is, when you flip through the pages while you are revising the topic, at that very instance, what will happen is you will know that, okay, this is one area that I had seen in this particular newspaper on this particular day. Or let's say you had seen this in the CNA of this particular day, or the Hindu analysis done by BYJU'S on this particular day. Because then it's very easy for you to go back to that, read those notes, read that particular part and be done with it. And that will help you a lot in revising and accumulating the topics. Because accumulation of topics becomes very crucial while you are about to write the mains examination or even the prelims examination. So at this very instance, it will help you a lot if you have done at least this, even if you have not mentioned the entire news. And I would not suggest that you make notes of each and everything that you see in the current affairs. Rather, make a note of very crisp points, maybe just 2 or 3 points per news article, and mention the source, mention the topic, mention the date, so that you can go back to the reference source whenever you want. So at least this should be done. So the first thing that has to be done is that you have a file for each and every subject separately, subject wise file. Second, you have left space for current affairs, and current affairs in what manner? Topic, or if you want a very brief description, date and source. Source could be the CNA, the Hindu analysis, the Hindu newspaper, any other magazine, any website, it could be PIB, all these could be the sources that you have. And if you do only this much, it's more than enough. And let's say you are not using files and you are making the notes in the notebook, then just ensure that at the end of every topic, there is 1 or 2 blank sheets that have been left there, so that you can add on the current affairs whenever and wherever you see one. Okay, so at least these 2 things have to be done. Now, the third thing is about the length of the notes. Now, should I write each and everything that has been explained in the lectures, or should I make crisp points out of it? So the very first thing that you should know is, why are you making notes? You are making notes because it is going to help you in revision. You are making notes because it should help you in saving time, right? So these are some of the reasons why you are making notes. So it should do all that. It should cater to all these needs that we have for making notes. So for that very purpose, what is also important is that you make notes which are very clean. For example, let's say you are making notes on the revolt of 1857. So the wrong way to do it would be that you start writing about the revolt of 1857 line by line, each and everything that is being explained. So where it originated from, what were the reasons, what were the immediate reasons, what were the socio-political reasons, what happened during the revolt, what happened after the revolt, everything just you have kept on writing, and for 2 pages and 3 pages you have written just about the revolt of 1857. Now just imagine coming back to it. It's easy to read the first paragraph, maybe the first 7-8 lines, and after that it becomes difficult for you to catch hold of each and every line. So what should have been done instead is that make use of headings and subheadings. How? My heading would be, let's say, the revolt of 1857. Inside that, I can come with all the subheadings. The first subheading could be, let's say, socio-economic causes. The second could be political causes. Then you might write about the immediate cause. Then you might make a note of during the revolt or what happened during the revolt. Then you might make note of what happened after the revolt. Then you could write about role of women. Then you could write about which areas or provinces participated. Then you could write about, can we call it the first war of independence, as Savarkar had called it. So all these kind of different kinds of notes could be made out of this one topic. So if I'm dividing all these into smaller subheadings, it's easy for you to catch hold of each and every part and revise each and every part. You can also make notes, for example, for the leaders, right? The leaders who were the participants, the leaders who actively fought in the revolt. So all these things can be done, correct? So when you do this, that you have made a heading and you have made a subheading, after that going through each and every part becomes very easy for you. Not only this, inside all these parts, I would strongly suggest that these should be done in a point-wise manner. These should be done in a point-wise manner, because once you are doing it in a point-wise manner, it again makes it easier for you to make notes of each and everything and revise each and everything when you come back to it. Try to write less. Don't include each and every piece of information. Do that if you feel that you are not good in a subject. Let's say you feel that this is one subject where I don't feel very confident. In that case, I would suggest, yes, these notes could be a little bigger as compared to the notes that you're making for other subjects. But if you feel that you are good in this subject, even you feel you are average in this subject, just make notes like this so that it's easier for you to come back. It's easier for you to revise, and it should serve all the purposes that we have for making notes. So this is what should be done in case of making notes, that the GS part and the current affairs have to be taken into account. Make files. If not, if you are using notebook, leave some pages, and why to do that we have explained each and everything. What should be done, how the notes should be made. If you want, make use of colors, but that's not something that's required for everyone. Many of you would be good enough with a simpler approach also, but if you are someone who wants to use colors or have a habit of using colors, it's always good to do that. But even if you don't do that, it doesn't make much of a difference. It's just about your habit, correct? So all these kind of things should always be made sure of while you are making notes. Now, apart from that, what about the books? I would suggest against making notes out of book. Let's say I take Lakshmikant for example. In Lakshmikant, once you start going through Lakshmikant, you will find that most of the things are already present in a note format. So rather than making notes out of it, just make or star mark the important points, underline the important areas, highlight the important areas. That's more than enough. Even for a descriptive book, let's say something like Bipin Chandra or Ram Charan Sharma, these kind of books, even if you are reading them, in those cases also, it's good to just underline or highlight the important areas which you did not find in your notes or you did not find in the lectures or in the current affairs. You are seeing some additional point there. Just underline them, highlight them, and no need to make notes out of them, because that will actually be one area where you are not saving any time, you are actually wasting time. So just that once you are starting to revise, the book and the notes that you have made for a given lecture should be open side by side, and you should be able to revise both of them simultaneously. Okay, so this is how note making should happen, and why note making is important is about all these things. And this is where I'll end this lecture. I hope that this helped you in clearing the doubts about making notes. Thank you very much.